Hey everyone, and welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Derek Bittner, and I'm joined today by Ash Paulson to discuss his recent hands-on time with Shadow of the Tomb Raider, as he got an early look. So, Ash, tell us a little bit about Shadow of the Tomb Raider.
Alright, well, basically, if you have played the first two games in this Tomb Raider reboot series, there's no mistake as to what you're playing. It's like, I can guarantee you're not going to sit down with Shadow of the Tomb Raider and be like, whoa, what am I playing? This is all completely new. No, it is very much the third Tomb Raider game in this reboot series. The presentation is very similar. So, it's not necessarily upending the tea table in that sense, but that's a good thing if you like the first two. If you like Tomb Raider 2013 and you liked Rise of the Tomb Raider, this very much seems to be in that same wheelhouse. So if you like the first two, it goes to follow that you're probably going to like this one as well. And yeah, I will say that the one major thing I would say I noticed from my gameplay demo is that there seems to be a much heavier focus on environmental puzzle solving this time around. So it isn't straight combat, it isn't straight survival. There is a lot of those, of course, but a large part of my demo, I have to say, was surprisingly slow-paced, methodical, and really, you basically, you're getting through these dilapidated ruins, tombs, potentially, and you have to really, you kind of take stock of the whole room, and then you really got to figure out, okay, how am I going to get Lara from here all the way across the room when every part of this environmental puzzle basically is a death trap,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so there is, I would say, a much heavier emphasis on environmental puzzle solving than in previous games.
That's actually really fascinating because that was an element of the original Tomb Raiders where you had to figure out these puzzles and solve these death traps and stuff like that. So that the fact that they're finally bringing in that aspect, because as you said, I don't think that was a major focus of the first two games. And I love the first two games, but having that puzzle focus, I'm actually kind of down for it.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't a focus of 2013. I have to admit, I didn't play very much of Rise of the Tomb Raider, very little of it actually, so I can't speak to that. But from what I understand, one of the complaints about 2013 was that there was too little actual tomb raiding and too little puzzle solving. And from what I understand, Rise of the Tomb Raider brought a little bit of that back, but not necessarily in a full sense.
Mm-hmm.
And what I got from Shadow of the Tomb Raider, not only from what I played, but the presentation they gave us was that, hey, we brought back tombs in Rise of the Tomb Raider because that's, really what fans wanted, but the tombs you saw in that game were maybe they looked a little ornate, maybe they looked like they had been preserved, and maybe were a little safe. Not the tombs in this game. You're going to go into some really, really nasty, terrifying, dangerous, messed up tombs in this game, and they're really trying to bring that sense of danger back into the tomb raiding part of Tomb Raider, I think, which, that's a good thing, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think that all they've shown up to this point is just like that teaser, which they didn't really even show any gameplay of. So how is the game looking itself, like visually? Is it a noticeable upgrade from Rise of the Tomb Raider? I know you didn't play much of it, but you did play a little bit.
Yeah, and I would say it's not necessarily, and that's for two reasons. A, this is still early not early, but it's still in the middle of development, and you can tell that things aren't quite polished to a shine yet, and that's fine. The other reason is that, honestly, Derek, maybe I'm just too old, and I'm portraying my age here, but games look so damn good now in general. Rise of the Tomb Raider was beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Then you have games like Uncharted 4, which is also beautiful, and then I see a game like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and I already know it's going to be gorgeous, and what I played, yeah, there is some lack of polish there for sure, some wonky climbing animations. You could tell it was an unfinished game, but it's still looking fantastic, and I have no doubt that by the time the game comes out in September, it's going to be, yet another one of those AAA, just absolutely gorgeous games, like, again, Uncharted 4, Horizon, Rise of the Tomb Raider. It's just, you get these AAA games now, they all look so amazing that it really is kind of hard to pick them apart, and kind of tell between them because they look so good.
Yeah, I can totally see where you're coming from with that. The thing is, I've been a huge fan of these reboots ever since they first came out, and it killed me when Rise of the Tomb Raider had that year-long exclusivity for Xbox One. So the fact that that's not the case for Shadow of the Tomb Raider, totally down for. And the thing is, I generally thought that Rise of the Tomb Raider was a better, improved on the gameplay of Tomb Raider 2013.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think the story was quite as strong. And I know they're this is probably the end of the trilogy. Like, they're wrapping up the story of these games, especially what Rise established. So I'm curious where it goes from here, but I'm also like, okay, let's see how, I'm pretty confident in the gameplay that I'm going to like it. But is there anything else about the game that kind of stood out to you?
Well, let's see, I'm looking at my notes here. There is going to be, and I kind of experienced this myself in the demo, there is a new focus on stealth combat using the jungle environment. So it's not as simple as like finding cover and then, sneaking out from behind cover. There are pieces of cover that'll have shrubbery growing around it that gives you extra protection or cover than you would get just from finding normal cover that leaves you kind of out in the open. And you're meant to use this shrubbery and this overgrowth to, of course, stalk your enemies and do stealth takedowns, which I did, and the stealth combat feels great, I have to say. The combat has always felt good in this series, in my opinion. It still feels good. It's interesting because I wasn't expecting the demo I got. I mean, basically, I started at 6:45, and I wasn't done until after 8 o'clock, like maybe 8:10ish. Mm-hmm. It's a long demo, and I died a couple of times and I took my time exploring, but you're going to be sitting there for a while and playing it, and it does give you the full range of experiences. So like, you start out in this town and you're kind of you're walking around much like you would in Uncharted 4, where you kind of do that slow walk while characters will talk and the story will play out. And then you can kind of explore more. And then you go into like the kind of exploring and getting through some dilapidated ruins, and you kind of get that whole focus on environmental puzzle solving. And then after that, you get into some swimming. They brought swimming back. And so there's, I believe, I can't remember, was swimming part of the first two games?
It's been a while. I remember there was water stuff, but I don't remember, like...
That's the thing.
I think there might have been in Rise, but it's been a little bit.
It's hard to say because they actually made a big deal of the swimming, and it was kind of without of earshot, but it almost sounded like they're like, hey, we brought back swimming because this is what fans wanted. So forgive me, it's been long enough since I played 2013, and I haven't played much of Rise, so I don't know if swimming is only now being introduced, but there's a whole swimming part, and the swimming controls feel great. You press A to ascend, press B to descend, and I gotta say, Derek, if you have any sort of claustrophobia or any sort of fear of drowning, prepare yourself, because there are these, you've played this series, so there are some QTE type events that happen. And man, some of the ones that happen when Lara is underwater and she's trying to, swim toward the surface, and you think you've made it, but then like rocks will start falling and she'll get lodged in between, these like pieces of rock underwater, and she's trying to breathe. I was like, oh, I was getting all clenched because, I have a claustrophobic, I don't like being bound and when I can't move, and just watching her underwater, it definitely get ready if you have either of those fears.
The only thing that could have made it worse for you is that all of a sudden spiders started showing up.
Exactly. No spiders, thankfully. I found a few mice, but I'm cool with mice, so no worries about that. But yeah, then even after that, though, after I get out of the swimming part, then we get stealth combat, and then you get gun combat, and then you get a little more, jumping around and climbing until finally the end of the demo. Mm-hmm. So it really does kind of take you around every kind of different part of the gameplay that the game has to offer so far. And, I will say, something I did notice that really jumped out at me was the climbing was very... obviously, in these games, the climbing is all very similar, Uncharted, similar to Tomb Raider, and etc. But I noticed that the climbing sections were much, I would say, the path forward isn't nearly as apparent in this game as it is in a game like maybe Uncharted 4. I definitely had a few deaths that just came from really hanging somewhere and not really knowing where to go and trying something and falling to my death and then trying again. And I will say that got a little bit annoying. Like, I definitely had a few deaths where it felt like you don't really have much of a margin of error, and the game, of course, you know how Uncharted works, or this Tomb Raider series works, so you'll be climbing along, things will fall, and you're playing the game as the game is kind of moving you along. Mm-hmm. And I kind of felt that there were a few sections in the demo that had too little a margin of error, where the game expects you to know what it wants you to do, but it doesn't message it that well, and so you end up dying. So that's kind of annoying, but again, it's still in middle development. These are things that are likely going to be ironed out. But I definitely noticed some pacing issues with a few what I felt were unnecessary deaths from those kind of automatic-ish sections.
Yeah, they tend to pile up sometimes, and they can get to you, but I can kind of see where you're coming from with that. Like, it just... kind of unfortunate. But I think like Rise had a little bit of that, but I also liked how freeform the climbing was in Rise compared to something like Uncharted, where Uncharted just have this one, like, this is where you need to go. Tomb Raider keeps it a little bit more loose, especially because I'm assuming her pickaxe is back.
Yes, it is, and that's actually what I was going to say. The other side of that is that the climbing feels much less
scripted.
Scripted. Yeah, scripted, canned. Like, it actually feels like there is real danger at any given moment when you're climbing, because you know that, you know, it's not like an Uncharted where Nathan could just hang out forever and nothing's going to happen. Chances are something's going to happen in Tomb Raider, and there were a few areas where like I would be shimmying along a ledge and bats would come out, and you have like a split second to press X before Lara loses her grip and falls. So there's definitely more of a game element to the climbing in Shadow of the Tomb Raider than there was Uncharted, because there's always that threat that something could happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
That you can die. So it definitely feels much less safe than it does in Uncharted.
I'm actually kind of curious about the stealth and gunplay. It's interesting to me that you mentioned specifically gunplay, because so much of this new reboot series has been put a focus on Laura and her bow and arrow, and not so much on the twin pistols that she was very well known for in the original games. And I think those were like the last weapon you got in 2013. Just to like cement the, like, yes, she is the Tomb Raider now. Then you get the and then you get the Rise, and she doesn't use them that much. But do they make an appearance in this gunplay, or is it the more like standard type of weaponry?
So the guns I was using, I literally just picked up off the mercenaries. The Trinity mercenaries I killed. So definitely not her dual pistols. They may have been in the game. She may have been equipped with them. It's like she may have had them in her inventory, but I didn't equip them. I basically just used the assault rifle that I picked up off one of the Trinity mercenaries I killed. And of course, she does come with her bow. Her bow's part of her character. She has it ready. You have it from the very beginning. So, her trusty bow is there, and she can like one of the puzzle solving elements actually is she can fire rope arrows that you have to fire at specific parts of the environment to pull, to like tie things together. They're like momentum, and like I would say the puzzles are very momentum and physics based so far. So you kind of have to think about the environment and try to think about what logically makes sense. But I will say that if you can't figure it out, it is kind of frustrating that the game doesn't try to nudge you in the right direction. And I kind of have a feeling that it will, when the game actually comes out. But I definitely had a couple of, areas where I was kind of running around aimlessly because I felt that the game had not done a very good job kind of at least some sort of environmental messaging of what I should do, and that's including her survival instincts.
I was actually just about to ask you about that. That's really surprising me, because usually I almost felt like the survival instinct in Rise of the Tomb Raider almost made puzzles kind of non-existent. It was so good that you didn't have to worry about it. So the fact that it's not communicating well to you, and the fact that you did use the survival instincts, that's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, now I will say, the survival instincts are still super, super useful, and perhaps maybe too powerful again, in the sense that clicking in the right or pressing in the right stick does highlight everything of interest in the environment. So things you can pick up, salvage, healing items, experience, whatever, also puzzle mechanics. But even though the puzzle mechanics are highlighted, they don't necessarily tell you what to do with those mechanics. So it's really up to you. Like, they'll basically lead you to the pond, but it's up to you to drink, basically. Okay. And so you may know what needs to be used, but you won't always know how it all fits together.
So did they give you any information on the story or the setting? Like you mentioned town and this other area. Like, is it going to be one central? I know Rise of Tomb Raider had a few smaller locations before you got to the really big one where you can explore everything. Is it going to be like that in Shadow as well?
So of course they were guarded about the getting into too many particulars about the story, but they definitely did talk about the setting and kind of the overall kind of the setting for the story and kind of what's going on. So spoiler alert, if you care about what happens at the end of what happens at the beginning of Shadow of the Tomb Raider, stop now. But basically, it looks like it's going to be one major environment potentially. They didn't say that, but basically it takes place in the jungles of Peru, and one of the reasons for that is that there's this whole backdrop against Mayan culture and the Mayan apocalypse. Basically, Lara is racing against Trinity to stop the Mayan apocalypse, essentially. And what this entails is there's this mystical dagger hidden in these Mayan ruins that apparently can set the apocalypse in motion. Now, here's what's interesting, and this is where the spoiler part comes in, so again, skip to the end if you don't want to hear this. But during the demo, again, the beginning of the game, presumably, Lara actually finds that dagger. And she takes it, and in a bid to escape and just make sure Trinity doesn't get their hands on it. Well, at least the way the story wants you to see it, her taking that dagger is actually what sets in motion the apocalypse. And so, after she takes that dagger, you're escaping, you're fighting through Trinity mercenaries. You come face to face with the main bad guy, who I think this time around his name is Dominguez, and he says, "Well, Lara, you screwed up. You just brought ruin upon the whole world. Look what you did." And she's like, "You're lying." And then suddenly a tsunami actually starts. He's like, "No, tsunami's first, and here's the wave of water coming." And the whole last part of the demo is awesome. Like, it's basically Lara trying to get through the tsunami in a city that it's the same city that you were walking around at the beginning of the demo. Now it's being flooded and destroyed, and people are being swept away by the flood.
Holy crap! That sounds amazing.
Awesome. And there's this one part right at the very end where you're shimmying across, or Lara's shimmying across like a rooftop, and you can see and hear a kid reaching for his mom, like, "I'm gonna fall, and Mom, I'm scared," and he falls and he dies. And God. And the sense you're supposed to get is that this is Lara's fault. And so you get to the end of the demo, and she meets up with Jonah. Jonah's back, by the way, so her friend Jonah, and they have this great character moment where she's like freaking out to Jonah, like, "Oh my God, this, the Trinity guy said this, and I took the dagger, and I brought about the end of the world." And Jonah, he's like, "Hey, Lara, it's not always all about you. He may have been lying to you. There are people who need our help right here, right now. Let's focus on that." And she's like, "No, we have to go." And he's like, "No, listen to me. Where would we even go? You don't have a lead. You need to focus on helping the people you can help right now." So there's definitely a focus, and this is what was told to us in the presentation too. There's a focus this time on Lara having to deal with the consequences of her own actions. So basically, the way they laid it out to us was the Tomb Raider 2013 was her struggling and turning into the Tomb Raider she needed to be. The second game, Rise of the Tomb Raider, was about her following her father's legacy and kind of, becoming prepared to do what she needed to do. And now this is the game where she, by the end of it, will have matured and become the Tomb Raider she was always meant to be. And part of that is essentially, I guess, is being able to accept the consequences of her own actions. And if we believe what we're supposed to believe from this demo, she may have actually brought on the apocalypse herself. Wow. So pretty interesting stuff. I gotta say, it was pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, because I never completed the original game just because it's so hard. But the whole Mayan thing, I feel like that was like the setup for the ending. So I was like, oh, okay. So I was probably it's a send up to the original game where that's the whole Mayan connection. That's how that works. That's kind of cool. And then you immediately say, oh yeah, she finds it right away and causes this apocalypse. I'm like, what?
That surprised me. I'm like, wow, okay, this is kind of a cool, even if it's like a bait and switch and she had nothing to do with it, it's kind of a cool way to start the game. Like, okay, this is the backdrop that she's not necessarily going to stop them from starting the apocalypse. She's going to prevent it from what, she already did it essentially, and she's just going to prevent it and recover the dagger from Trinity. So, yeah, and in that sense, I would say that if you weren't a big fan of the Trinity storyline in the second game, you may not be happy here, only because I did get the sense that it is very much a direct sequel. Like, it picks up almost exactly where Rise of the Tomb Raider presumably leaves off.
Trinity was a little unfortunate because I like this. Like, I don't like when everything's connected. It's just like, it can work sometimes, but when you don't establish that right away, and they did not really establish that much in the original Tomb Raider, at least for the 2013, at least to my memory. It's like, oh, come on, guys, don't do this. But I can kind of see where they're going, and Laura's handled organizations like this in the past, so I get it. And yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
I will laugh if we end up in like Atlantis at some point, because I know she ends up there in one of the other games.
Well, I gotta say, I have a feeling that the Peruvian jungles are going to end up being the main setting for the entire game, just because during the presentation we watched prior to our gameplay demos, it was basically related to us that the jungle is, to the way the developers see it, the jungle is the most dangerous place on the planet, which to them makes it the perfect setting to kind of filter all of Shadow of the Tomb Raider's themes and gameplay mechanics through. Like, they're really trying to bring back that sense of a hostile environment, danger at every corner, everything's out to get you, and they just thought that, the Peruvian jungles would be better for that than, again, I guess, the mountains of Siberia, which is where the second game took place. And then, of course, I think the first game took place off the coast of Japan, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's just the Pacific on a crazy island,
right?
Just surviving in sort of jungle, I guess. But yeah, they really did convey like a sense of how just cold everything was in Rise.
Right.
So that's interesting to me that they consider the jungle even more dangerous. So
yeah,
we'll see how that all comes together. But I mean, I'm excited. I really do love this reboot series, and I'm totally picking this up.
Yeah, no, I'm excited too. I have long been a fan of the reboot series, at least, Tomb Raider 2013. I still want to go back and play Rise, but playing this early demo of Shadow makes you want to play Rise even more, because I'm really liking where they're going with Lara's character with this. And now, of course, I say this as a kind of a casual fan of the new series. I was never a big Legacy Tomb Raider fan.
Oh, no, same here.
Yeah, so like those of you who are old school classic Tomb Raider fans, this may not apply to you. This is still very much new Tomb Raider. But I have been a fan of that, and let's see, to wrap up, I would just say, I don't know, in general, I would say that Lara seemed to me to be a little more weary and kind of unsure of her own moral compass in this game, whereas it seemed like she kind of at least felt like she was doing the right thing in the first two games. Whereas this game seems to kind of test her confidence in that sense, where, wow, maybe I'm the bad guy, necessarily. And the other thing I noticed, too, is that she's ripped now. Like, I don't know exactly...
She get a little bit more muscly in this one.
Oh, yeah. Like, and it's... I mean, maybe it's just the clothes she's in. Maybe that makes it more obvious, and I didn't play Rise, so she might have been ripped in that game, too. But from what I recall, in Tomb Raider 2013, she was not as ripped as she is in this game. So... Which, I mean, that's realistic, because
exactly.
She's doing all this crazy stuff, so... Yeah, like, her arms are super toned and ripped in this game.
Don't remember that for Rise, but she was also in parkas a lot, so...
That's true, and, like, now you're in the jungle, it's humid, so naturally the outfits are not as, heavy, and they're lighter. So, yeah, but I just noticed that she seemed to be, like, really ripped, so, yeah, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
and,
I'm cool with it.
Yeah, so I would say overall, it's if you like the first two games, Shadow of the Tomb Raider is shaping up to be the next installment of that, and it's shaping up to be what you wanted it to be. But if you're expecting a return to classic old-school Tomb Raider in every sense, probably not what you're looking for, but you also probably already knew that.
Yeah, bring back the, boxy control thing. Oh, God, I know, right? Those old games. The first set of remakes that Crystal Dynamics did, Legend and the Anniversary, I enjoyed those, but...
Yeah, those are better. I played around with those, I remember.
But 2013 is still better. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Still much prefer this style. I know there's some old school fans, but that's just me.
There is one more thing that I'm sure people will be wondering about, because it's kind of a hallmark of the franchise, is deaths. Are they super gory like they were in 2013? I died a few times, and it does seem like they're doing closer to the Rise of the Tomb Raider thing, where it was still gory, of course, and you have those death scenes, but it's still a little bit pulled back from the ridiculous violent deaths you could get in the original Tomb Raider, or the 2013.
Just the pierced in the neck. That's the one that always stands out to me when you're
exactly. It's like, there's still various, like, at least the ones like, I got accidentally. There are some impaling deaths, but they're not nearly as graphic as that infamous one from Tomb Raider 2013. So
yeah,
for the squeamish out there, at least so far, nothing too serious to worry about.
Cool. All right, well, I think that covers it for our Shadow of the Tomb Raider discussion. So thank you for watching, and if you like this video, be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. And of course, make sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more on Tomb Raider, hopefully, and other things gaming as well. Until next time, bye.